Hello and good evening to one and all present here this evening. As we all know, economies the world over are crashing, and there is rampant unemployment, fatalities, and chaos strewn across the globe. So, to share the truth, an innovative solution is the need of the hour. Hence, some Indians came together to give a platform to fellow Indians to help all Indians. Yes, that's right. I, Ashutosh Asthana, on behalf of the entire team of Restart India, welcome you to the fifth Masterclass webinar. To give a brief about Restart India, it is a hackathon which will be live from the 12th to the 14th of June. We invite entries from both students and professionals who will be judged separately. Minimum 1 to maximum 5 participants in a team. The participants will have to present a working prototype at the end of the hackathon to our judges. Please note, no source codes have to be shared. The solutions can be provided on the following themes. If at all you wish to use some other theme relevant to COVID-19, you can please go forward with that. To join our cause, please go to the website restartindia.devfolio.co. The timeline of the hackathon stands like this. The last day to onboard with us would be the 12th of June, 5 p.m., post which the hackathon would start instantly. The next stage would end on the 14th of June, 1 p.m., post which the semi-finals would start. Post 4 p.m. on the 14th of June, our grand finale would be streamed live, and one of the lucky teams which we have would be the national winners of Restart India Hackathon. Now coming on to today's agenda. For today's masterclass, we have with us Mr. Saravanan Neel. Saravanan, fondly known as Sara, is a seasoned leader who has served in directorial positions for 14 years. However, he traversed various continents whilst being in the quest for that elusive peace of mind. Finally, he co-founded Silver Oak Health in 2015 and since then has been helping others find their peace of mind. Restart India thanks you, Sarah, to have taken time out from a busy day to help us in our cause. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ashutosh, and good evening, everyone. Let me share my screen here. All right. Again, good evening once again. My name is Saravanan Neel, and I'm going to be the facilitator for this mindfulness session. We're going to have it for the next 45-50 minutes, and we will follow it up with the question and answers. If you have any questions, Ashutosh will be facilitating all the questions. All right, so let's dive into the topic. I'm sure a lot of you would probably are curious about what is mindfulness. I'm sure it's been one of those most popular words these days. People are talking about it. People are practicing. A lot of people are in corporates and schools. It's become very popular. So I'm sure all of you are very eager to learn what mindfulness is all about, right? So I'm going to walk you through the whole process, and I'm going to also let you experience what does it feel like to practice mindfulness, right? And towards the end of the session, I'm going to give you some takeaways in terms of how you can continue to practice mindfulness once you are aware what mindfulness and what are the benefits of mindfulness, right? So I'm sure for the past 3 months, right, we have been going through one of the most toughest period of our lives, right? The whole COVID-19 pandemic has not been easy on us, right? And we've been living in midst of anxiety and uncertainty, and it goes on, right? So it's been hard on us, and now things are slowly settling down, but then it's still not what we would want it to be. So we are still going through. In fact, today I was talking to several of my clients where they've started talking about people are more anxious now to return to work, right? So how can we help them overcome the anxiety of returning to work? So some of these things are the challenges as we speak, right? So I'm sure if you are feeling on the edge with whatever has gone in the last 3 months, you're not alone, right? So we're all here together, right? And fear is probably the most deadliest virus today, right? And panic is probably as contagious as the virus itself, right? And of course, the all the news channel, the social media, obviously are not helping, and for us to settle down, right? They're building a sense of anxiety and uncertainty among all of us. So it's very important to understand, some of these simple tips are very important in terms of cutting down the social media diet, right? Or watching the news channel, right? Limiting that is going to be a big help in cutting down your uncertainty and anxiety for that matter, right? Or watching the news. So when I talk about uncertainty, I want to refer to our big brains, right? So our brain does not like, uncertainty. In fact, one of the core functions of human brain is to make sense and meaning out of all the data, we process on a daily basis using our five senses. And what are those five senses? The ability to see, hear, smell, taste and touch, right? So these are the five senses we use, right? For example, today, all of you who are on this webcast, right? You're probably using at least your two senses, right? The ability to see and hear, right? So you're making sense out of whatever I'm saying through using these two senses, right? The moment we are confronted with uncertainty, right, our brain evokes a lot of difficult emotions, right? The moment our brain is not able to make sense out of any situation, it evokes a lot of difficult emotions, right? That is what we have experienced in the last few months when we were going through this COVID-19, pandemic outbreak, right? So some of these difficult emotions are, maybe could fear or anxiety, worry, frustration, and sometimes anger as well, right? So it's very important to understand that it's absolutely fine for us to go through this, right? The what I'm referring to is the whole uncertainty and how it could evoke. And I'm sure we have gone through some difficult emotions, right, during this time, right? We all had challenge managing those emotions. So we'll talk about how some of these emotions arise within us and what do we do and how mindfulness can be a great tool to overcome these emotions as well, right? And while I'm talking about the function of brain, I also want to talk a little bit about what happens inside our brain when we actually go through a stressful moment, right? And for this particular slide, I want you to recollect a recent stressful period you had gone through, maybe in the last 2 weeks, 1 week, or last few days, whenever it was. I just want you to recall that while I'm walking you through this particular slide, right? So there are so I'm going to talk about two parts of the brain, which gets affected during the a stressful period, right? Or when we experience stress, right? The first one is prefrontal cortex, right? This is the newest part of human being's brain, right? Which is responsible for, it is right behind our forehead, right? Which is responsible for functions like focus, concentration, creativity, decision making, mental clarity, memory, right? All of these important functions are controlled and driven by prefrontal cortex. In fact, it's also referred as the chief executive center of the brain, right? Because it holds all the important aspects of our functioning, day-to-day functioning, right? In terms of focus, concentration, creativity, right? All of these things, decision making, right? So it's almost called the chief executive center of the brain, right? The other part of human being's brain is called amygdala, right? Which is responsible for your emotions. All the emotions we just spoke about, right? Fear, anxiety, worry, anger or happiness or sadness, whatever emotions you experience, all of that is controlled by amygdala, right? So these are the two parts of the brain you need to remember when we are undergoing any stressful event or a situation, right? So now, the moment we are confronted with stress, right, what happens is your prefrontal cortex shuts down, right, almost by, I don't know, maybe 60-70%, right? So suddenly it's only available to you at 30%. And can you imagine, the so-called chief executive center or the CEO of a company shutting down and not functioning at a time of crisis in the organization? And you can imagine what would happen to the organization. That's exactly what happens to us, right? So the moment prefrontal cortex shuts down, the part of the brain which is supposed to be, reasoning, being analytical, right? All of that is not available to us, right? On the other hand, amygdala, which is responsible for emotions, continues to remain active 100%, even in a stressful period. And no surprise to all of you, that's the reason we all tend to become very emotional, right? So now the reason I told you to recollect one of your recent stressful periods was to ask yourself, was I emotional during that time? And of course, most of the time the answer is yes, because the logical, the analytical, the reasoning part of the brain was not available for you to access. And obviously, you end up becoming more emotional. And what is the outcome of being emotional during a stressful time? We say things we later regret. We do things which we later regret. Oh my God, did I say this? Did I do this? Right? Those are the responses we generally get to hear after they cool off from the stressful period, right? So this is very important to understand, right? So mindfulness is a tool. We will look at as how it can help you to keep your prefrontal cortex active even in a stressful period, right? So that you are making good decisions, you're able to focus, you're able to concentrate even during a stressful period, right? So that is what we're going to learn later in the webcast as to how we can keep our prefrontal cortex 100% active, right, even in a stressful period. Okay, right. All right, so I'm going to start with a small exercise here. Okay, I'm sure you'll be wondering what is this counting exercise. Okay, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds here, right? And I want all of you to just maybe close your eyes, or you want to just do a half gaze and just focus on something. It's absolutely fine, but I want all of you to just count your thoughts during this 30 seconds. So let's start. When I ask you to start, so I'm going to give you some instructions before we start that. Okay, so the exercise is all about counting your thoughts. So we're going to label our thoughts with numbers, right? For example, the first thought is, what is the exercise all about? Thought number one, right? So that's how you count, right? And there could be another thought, that could be another thought. We keep on counting as to how many thoughts we are getting. So that's what we are going to try and do in this particular exercise. Okay, and again, do not try and force yourself not to have thoughts, or don't try and push yourself to have a lot of thoughts. So you don't have to do any of those things. It just happens. Okay, and believe me, you will get thoughts. That's what minds do. Minds produce thoughts. So you will get, and as I said, don't try and force yourself not to get thought, right? It is absolutely not possible, right? The more you suppress, the more thoughts would come, right? For example, if I tell you, do not think about a pink colored elephant, your mind would have painted a picture of a pink colored elephant right in front of you, right? And that powerful mind is, right? Even things you have never seen, or probably you're never going to see, mind can bring it in a pictorial form in front of you, right? That powerful mind is. So let's just go with the flow, right? And just enjoy this exercise. Okay. All right. So let's start. 30 seconds starts now. I want you to count your thoughts. I'm not going to ask any of you what thoughts you had. Obviously, it's a dangerous question, but I'm just going to, we're going to do a poll, and I'm going to find out how many thoughts all of you had, right? So 30 seconds, just label whatever the mentee and answer the poll, right? It's going to be a bar diagram. You're going to have three options which you're going to pick from, and all the responses are anonymous. Okay, so we're going to go here. Okay, all right. So this is the link. It's called menti.com, menti.com, and then the code you need to use is 195806. And once you use the code, you'll be given this question, and you'll be given three options to pick from. And you can let me know what are the number of thoughts you had in 30 seconds, right? So it's just an exercise I want to do as part of our mindfulness webcast. Okay, all right. So I see already people polling in. I know there's a lag when you're using the YouTube Live, so I'm going to give it a little extra time to make sure that we are covering everybody. And give it a few more seconds. I've been told to give some more time. So again, menti.com, menti.com, and the code is 195806. All right. Okay. So I see a few more coming in, but we'll quickly keep moving on. All right. So it's good to know, right? As to how many thoughts we could be possibly getting in 30 seconds, and this particular exercise, you were focused on your thoughts, right? That's the reason you were able to count your thoughts and. Generally we don't do that, right? We don't sit and count our thoughts on a daily basis, but then it's just to give you an idea of how many thoughts we could possibly be going through, right? And again, in a subconscious mind, right? And we don't pay attention to all our thoughts as we speak, right? So there are a lot of thoughts which just come and go and we don't pay attention, and then of course some important thoughts come, then we do pay attention and we do act on those thoughts as well, right? So we'll talk about a little more about thoughts as we move on to the presentation. Right. So as per the National Science Foundation, we have anywhere between 15,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day, right? So that's the number we are looking at. And the range is so wide because, it depends on each day, right? If my day is normal, my mood is normal, my emotions are neutral, probably not many thoughts. If of course I'm very anxious, I'm very depressed, I'm overwhelmed, obviously a lot more thoughts. So all of that is what creates this range of 15,000 to 70,000 thoughts, right? 98% of our thoughts are repetitive, right? So we just keep recycling our thoughts. I'm sure you would have noticed, right? A lot of these thoughts keep coming back again and again, right? 80% of our thoughts are negative, right? Which is what the problem is, right? In fact, it was probably useful at one point of time, right, when we were living in the wild, right, obviously to protect ourselves from the wild animals, it was very useful. But then today we live in civilized society and cities and towns. We are not threatened by lions or tigers, but then we still have that fight or flight response kicking in, right? So it's very important to understand that most of the thoughts are working against you, right? So that is something we need to manage, right? And half of our life, right? This is based on a Harvard Medical School study. To be precise, 47% of our life we spend in thoughts, right? And what do thoughts do? Thoughts keeps us either in the future or in the past, right? So when you have a thought, right, it is not about the present moment because you are taking yourself into a present moment or something happened in past, and you're just going to that particular situation and parking yourself there and then thinking about those things, right? That's what happens when we have a thought, right? So it's very important to understand, right? Thoughts keeps us either in the future or in the past, and today we spend half of our life being in the future or in the past, right? And fortunately, right, you don't have to pay any rent. It's completely free. That is the good part of it. The bad part is it's very hard, right? No wonder we all get exhausted at the end of the day because we are trying to live three different lives: past and present and future. right? So it's very important to understand how can you start living more and more in the present moment. And that's exactly what mindfulness will help you and teach you to live in the present moment, right? Talking about thoughts, it's a very powerful tool, right? If you know how to manage, obviously you can use them in the right way, but not, it obviously could cause a lot of harm and damage to us, right? And of course, difficult to turn off when we don't need anymore, right? Unfortunately, the Alexa doesn't work here. Alexa, turn my thoughts off. It's not going to work for us, right? And as I said, it disconnects us from the present moment. It puts us either in the future or in the past, right? That's what thoughts do, right? And thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are mere thoughts. The moment we start believing our thoughts, it could lead to a lot of problems. And that is what happens in our day-to-day life, right? Every thought we get, we kind of start, for example, somebody's looking at me in my office and I think, oh my God, that person is, talking about me, right? That is my thought. Maybe that person is looking something behind me, but then the way I perceive is this person is talking about me. And you can imagine what is the next step, right? My emotions are flowing, right? I'm wondering, what is this person talking about? Why is this person talking about? What did I do to this person? Did I say something? Did I not say something? Right? All these kind of various things, various thoughts are going on, like leading to a lot of negative emotions. And of course, my behavior gets affected, right? So this is what happens in a typical situation, how thoughts trigger emotions and emotion control your behavior. Right? So it's very important to understand on how do I reframe my thought? How do I manage my thought? Right? So that is, again, it's a separate topic by itself. I don't want to get into that, but I just want to give you a little bit of gist about why thoughts are so important, right? So, thoughts ultimately control your emotions and behavior, and they're all, a part of a vicious circle. They control each other, but then it all gets triggered by a thought. So it's very important to understand, where it all starts from, right? And as I said earlier, right, thoughts keep us either in the future or the past, right? And again, when I talk about future and the past, I also want to refer these two aspects to what we call as anxiety and depression, right? So anxiety is always about the future, the unknown, and what we refer them as what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I get COVID-19? What if I lose my job? What if I don't get my salary next month, right? All these are, the scenarios we play in our mind all the time, right? And we talk about past, it's also referred as depression, right? It is about something very unpleasant which has happened in the past. We're not able to, overcome that. We're not able to come in terms with that, right? We are just brooding about it, right? And we call this only if this did not happen to me, only if this person did not do this to me, right? This is what we talk about past, right? So understanding the difference between the future and the past is also understanding the difference between anxiety and depression, right? So that is what, we want to understand here, and that's what keeps away from the present moment, right? And again, when I talk about, the whole mind and what is going on, right, we need to also understand the habits of mind, right? One is, we all do a lot of multitasking, right? And I'm sure you've heard this in the past, where our brain can focus only on one thing at a time, right? In my previous role as an HR leader, I used to pride myself on multitasking. I thought that was one of probably the best trait I had, and I used to, hire candidates based on, their multitasking skills. Later, I realized it was a myth. It's actually cutting down your productivity by 40%. It leads to a lot of mistakes, at whatever you're doing, whether you're in your kitchen cooking or you're working in your office, doesn't matter. It leads to a lot of mistakes, right? And talking about autopilot mode, right? We all switch on the autopilot mode every day, right? From the time we start our day, right? Brushing our teeth to showering or eating a meal or driving a car or working at your office desk, doesn't matter. We are on autopilot mode. And this is the time I was talking about, half of our life we are not there. How many times you have started driving, right? And suddenly you're in your office parking lot, and you're wondering, oh my God, how did I get there? I didn't even realize. Because you are deep, lost in thoughts. right? That's what happens to us all the time. While having a meal, we are probably looking at a phone or looking at the TV or reading something, right? We are not there. And in all my workshops, I always remember when I ask them, like, for example, if I'm doing a workshop in the morning, I ask them, hey, what did you have for dinner last night? Half the crowd probably won't even remember. Right? Because I was never present while having that food. Right? So that's what we do, right? We go on autopilot mode all the time, right? So mindfulness as a practice, right, helps you cut down both multitasking as well as the autopilot mode, right? So you start living more and more in the present moment, right? So again, I'm kind of building up, the things around mindfulness. I'm going to, if you're wondering what is mindfulness, I'm going to talk about it shortly. Okay. All right. With that, I know I've talked enough about mindfulness. So before defining mindfulness, I want to talk about what does it feel like? What does it feel like to experience mindfulness? Right. So I want to, have everybody go through a short exercise here, right? And I'm going to, walk you through myself, right? And the beauty of this practice is, it'll actually bring you to the present moment. That's the whole idea of, having this experience, outlined here. So I'm going to start this, practice, and I want all of you to follow, right? So I'm assuming most of you are sitting on a chair at home, at work, wherever you are, right? So I want you to make sure that, you pull yourself, in the little bit of, front of a chair, so that your back is, not leaning on the back of the chair, but then, it's by itself. So I want to make sure your back is straight, right? And I want your chin to be parallel to the ground. I want both your feet to be on the ground. I want you to comfortably place your hands on the armrest or either on the, on your lap, right? On your thighs. So that's what I want you to do. So that's the position I want all of you to get into it. Once you are in that position, I want you to gently close your eyes, right? And make sure that your facial muscles, your jaw, your eyebrows, everything is relaxed completely. Your neck muscles, your shoulders, all of that should be absolutely relaxed. I want you to start feeling very light, right? That is the experience I want you to have while you are settling down in this posture, right? So that's the posture I want all of you to be in. And once you are ready in this posture, gently bring your attention to your breath, right? As you are inhaling and exhaling, I just want you to bring your attention to your breath and just observe your breath, right? As you inhale and exhale, right? How does the air feel when you inhale? Does it feel slightly cold? And similarly, when you exhale, does it feel slightly warm? Just observe your breath. Every breath is a new breath. And just continue to focus and pay attention to your breath. And where do you feel your breath? Is it in your chest or your abdomen? Where do you feel it? And while trying to pay attention, your mind would wander, and it's absolutely fine, triggering a thought, or there could be a noise, distraction, or a smell, something, right? And you don't have to do anything. You just pay attention to whatever the distraction is, whatever the thought is. And you don't have to act on it. You don't have to react. You don't have to respond. And you just gently bring your attention back to breath, right? And every time your mind is distracted, just let it go. Just observe whatever the distraction is, just let it go and bring your attention back to breath. And this is the exercise I want you to do in this particular experience. We just observe for a few more breaths. Last breath. All right, when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and bring your attention back to the screen. All right, so this is a very simple, most simplest way of practicing mindfulness, where you're trying to be in the present moment. You're intentionally paying attention to your breath to be in the present moment, right? So that is pretty much what mindfulness is all about, right? Being aware. of what is unfolding moment by moment, right? So I want, you to share your experience as to what did you experience here, right? So again, we are going to do a small poll here. So we'll go back to the word cloud here, all right? And what did you experience, right? While you're practicing mindfulness, I want you to, give me this feedback. And we can build on the word cloud. Whatever words you see on the screen, I would recommend if you could use, if your experience resonates with the same word, I would recommend use the same word. So given the lag, we'll give it some more time here. So if your whatever you experience resonates with what you see, I would recommend you use those words. All right, so we'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, so I see a lot of people experienced calmness, they were focused, and they were, I see another few calms on the side, and then being present actually, right? And then some could actually smell of something cooking, or some people said they were just a lot of thoughts as well, a lot of stillness. Okay, so this is what we experience when we practice mindfulness. So we'll talk about a little more when we get to understand more in detail about what mindfulness is. But then I'm glad, the experience what you had is very similar to what mindfulness should be giving you. So anyway, I'm going to go back to my slides again here. So all right, thank you very much for your participation. Right. So quickly, I don't know if you recognize, some of the celebrities on the screen, right? So on the left is Hugh Jackman. He's a British actor who leads a demanding life, right? So he turned to mindfulness to find that little bit of, the peace and calmness what we're talking about. So the next is a person called Tim Ryan. He's a U.S. congressman from Ohio, right? He also wrote a book called Mindfulness Nation, right? And then the next one, obviously, I'm sure people familiar with basketball should know him, LeBron James. And, he practices mindfulness to improve his focus and concentration, on the court when he's playing basketball. And of course, then you have U.S. Army, then you have the British House of Commons, the parliament there, they all practice mindfulness, right? And of course, Oprah Winfrey, right there, who's a big proponent of mindfulness as well. So all these folks, celebrities have turned to mindfulness, right? Of course, for a specific reason, right? In terms of being more aware, going more present, obviously reduce stress. So there are several reasons why they all have turned to mindfulness. So we'll talk about all of that as well, right? And of course, mindfulness is very popular, right? In fact, these are various research publications in the last several years. But then, as you see, these studies up to 2016, these publications are actually going up, right? So peer review papers and all of that are actually increasing. So mindfulness is, getting very popular, and also the reason is it's a scientifically proven, it's evidence based. So what I mean by that is, if you practice mindfulness, the benefits what we're going to talk about is obviously, all of us could harvest, those benefits by practicing mindfulness. So that's one of the reasons why it is getting very, very popular, right? And of course, a lot of corporations like Google, Nike, Apple, right, they all have been incorporating mindfulness sessions or coachings and trainings inside their organizations, right? And a few more companies here: Goldman Sachs, SAP, General Mills, Sony, Intel, right, EY, Aetna, Facebook, all these companies, and there are several other companies who are today, have incorporated, mindfulness practice inside their organization. Of course, they all see that it's giving them a lot of advantages of having this, right? So let's talk about what is mindfulness, right? I know we have experienced mindfulness. Let's kind of, talk a little bit about mindfulness as well, right? So when we talk about mindfulness, it's all about, maintaining a moment by moment awareness of our thoughts and feelings and sensations and emotions or surrounding environment, right, through a gentle, nurturing lens, right? So that is what, we talk about. Being, when I say, gentle, I talk about being non-judgmental, right? Being nice to yourself during this moment, right? So it's about paying attention, right? It's hard to slow down and notice things in a busy world, right? So mindfulness as a practice helps you do that, right? So there are several, definitions of mindfulness, but I'm going to just leave it here in terms of being aware of the present moment, what is unfolding, right, moment by moment. So that is what we want to focus on, right? And of course, paying attention in a particular way, right? So for example, in the experience what we did, we were paying attention to our breath, right? So these are, some of the examples of what mindfulness is all about. As I said, the definition is very simple, and John Kabat-Zinn is the father of the modern day mindfulness, who was developed a lot of programs around it, and he was instrumental in getting this whole scientific study around mindfulness, right? So when we talk about roots of mindfulness, it goes all the way to Buddhism, right? Almost 2,500 years back, right? And of course, the word, sati is what today we call it as mindfulness, from the Pali language, which is what the Buddhists use as a language. So that's the root of mindfulness. But then I would say the modern day mindfulness is probably developed in the last 40, 50 years, right? That's where it all started. And today it's in mainstream with a lot of studies around it, right? And let's talk about some of the benefits of mindfulness, right? So while we talked about how do we practice, right? So I also want to talk about what are the benefits of mindfulness, right? And I'll talk about how do you practice as well for an ongoing basis. How can you actually continue a practice of mindfulness, right? So I'll probably talk about a couple of benefits here. I'll focus on health and maybe in cognitive skills. Okay. So when we practice mindfulness, I know I've not discussed how to practice, but then we went through an experience of practicing mindfulness, right? So that's exactly what I'm referring to. So when you practice, there are certain hormones released in our body which helps cut down cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, right? And there are several studies which have found it could actually improve your sleep, right? Reduce stress. All of this, what is you can experience or you can get from practicing mindfulness. Similarly, on the cognition, we talked about the prefrontal cortex, the chief executive center of the brain, right? Which probably is not available to you at a stressful point, right? So when you practice mindfulness, right, you can actually keep your prefrontal cortex a lot more active. It is actually lighting up a lot more. Your access to prefrontal cortex is a lot more, which basically means your focus, your concentration, your creativity, attention, memory, mental clarity, all of decision making, all of that improves, right? And I'm sure, nobody I know who would want to say, no, I don't want to improve my focus and concentration, or I don't want to improve my memory, or I don't want to improve my decision making skills. Of course, we all want to improve that, right? And that particularly will give you an edge, right, over others, wherever you are, at workplace or at home or in a social gathering. Obviously, it's all going to give you a lot of edge, right? So it's very important that, we can develop our cognitive skills by practicing mindfulness, right? So these are all, as I said, evidence-based, right? There is data to prove it actually works, right? And here is a case study I want to present in front of all of you, right? And this is from SAP. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this company, SAP, a large product company, right? So they have a full-fledged mindfulness program for their employees, right? And this particular case study is about 650 participants who participated in the in-house mindfulness program, and they continue to practice, right? And that is the key here, right? Continue to practice. So you attending this lecture and learning about mindfulness is not going to change anything unless you continue to practice. This is about going to the gym and developing those six packs, right? So the same effort happens in developing those muscles in your brain as well, right? Rewiring your neuroplasticity. All of that happens only when you practice mindfulness. So what did we find out from this particular study, right? So all these 650 participants were assessed after 4 weeks and 6 months after they started continuing to practice mindfulness, right? As you see, right, their level of happiness and well-being improved, having a purpose in life, sense of meaning and satisfaction improved, ability to focus improved, having mental clarity and creativity, all of that improved. And of course, on the right hand side, you can also see the stress levels drop, right? So this is exactly what I've been talking about at the beginning of the session, in terms of mindfulness is such a powerful tool, yet a simple tool. All of us can, accommodate in our daily schedule so easily, right? And I'll talk about how do you do that, right? And you can see mind-blowing results when you start practicing mindfulness, right? So this is again a simple case study I want to present. There are several others, but then, obviously, I just want to give you one case study to understand how effective and powerful mindfulness is. Okay, so here is another simple exercise which we normally recommend. It's called stop, right? Again, these are exercises which you can do again when you feel very overwhelmed. There are a lot of things going on, right? And you just stop, right? And you take a stock of what is going on, right? And that's when you stop and you take a breath. You observe your breath, right? And you open and observe what is happening with your body, what sensations, right? What is going on, right? All of that. And then finally you start proceeding to whatever you want to do, right? So these are all, 2-minute breaks we recommend, you do during the day several times if possible, right? When you can actually, cultivate the practice of mindfulness. So I'm going to talk about this practice inside a tool through which you can start practicing as well, right? So the tool is called TRANQUIL Mindfulness app, right? It is, as I said, the practice, what I walked you through is pretty straightforward and simple, but then I also know that the motivation for us to do it on our own is very difficult, right? And just to sit by yourself, right, in your wherever you are at your house, and just focus on your breath, and all of that is going to be very difficult. I know I've been there as a beginner. I've experienced those things. So that's the reason I have this app called TRANQUIL Mindfulness, available both on Google Play Store and iOS App Store. You can download, you can set up a profile and go to the guided section, right? Once you go to the guided section, you will see several, mindfulness tracks available for you to practice, right? So you have one of a psychologist's voice, with a soothing background music. You just have to listen and follow the instructions. Like the way I was giving instructions during that short experience, you will actually get a voice telling you what to do step by step, right? So that's how you cultivate the practice of mindfulness, right? So it's made very simple, and just by downloading app, you can start practicing, right? So there are several tracks available inside. They all run anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes at the lower end, and then 8 to 10 minutes on the higher end, right? So you can pick and choose whatever you want to practice. It's absolutely up to you. There are also 7, 10, and 21-day programs available. You can select those programs, and the app would automatically assign new tracks every day for you to practice, right? So I would recommend 8 to 10 minutes a day, and for a period of 8 weeks, you'll start noticing that you are slowly getting out of this autopilot mode, right? That is some change you will start seeing, right? You're being more present, right? And you start, right, and you start applying, mindfulness in your day-to-day activities, right? So mindfulness is not about a structured practice. Mindfulness is about your way of life, right? Next meal you're going to eat, you're going to obviously look at it and say, okay, what am I eating? What am I tasting? What ingredients have gone into this particular meal, right? So that is what being present, right? Next time in a meeting, sitting in the office, I'm going to pay attention to every word I hear, right? And most of the time, what we do today in the meetings, before somebody could finish, I've already drafted my response in my head, right? So mindfulness applies in mindfulness eating, mindfulness listening, mindfulness walking. You could actually, put it in every aspect of your life. That's the beauty of mindfulness, right? So that is what mindfulness can eventually do when you start practice, right? So here is the app through which you can continue to practice. And once you log in and you look into the guided tracks, you'll see a lot of these tracks are locked. We call them as premium track, and we only give them the code, either to our corporate customers or to events like this where, we give people to, unlock the code. So the code for all the participants today who are in this particular webinar, premium in capital letters is the code for you to unlock the premium content. Okay, so I just want you to make a note. So once you download the app, go to the guided section and you'll see some of the apps have the lock icon. Just click on the lock and type this code and it'll unlock the premium content, all the premium content forever. You don't have to use this code anymore, only just once. Okay, so once you download, you'll start practicing, and that's how you'll cultivate the practice of mindfulness. Okay, so I'm going to open up for the last poll in terms of what are the takeaways for each of you from this overall session, right? What did you like? What did you think that I want to continue this practice with this particular thing, what I heard from this session? So I want to hear from all of you, right? While we do that, I'm also going to open for questions and comments and feedback. So I'm hoping Ashutosh will facilitate with any questions the audience have. And I'm going to flip to the poll while we are taking questions as well, so that people can also, talk about what are the takeaways for each of you. All right. Ashutosh, over to you for any questions we have from the audience.
Thank you, Sarah. If I have to be mindful, then I feel that I'll be tongue-tied because the session was absolutely an eye-opener. But still, being a host, I cannot be tongue-tied. So to begin with, I feel that it's often said that some things are too valuable to be encased in words. I believe that I have witnessed such a moment today. Something as significant as mindfulness has been missing from the lives of many people. From the deepest part of my heart, Sarah, I thank you for having delivered such an eye-opening session.
Thanks, Ashutosh.
So having said that, we now open the floor for the questions and answers. So Sarah, taking over the first question. Is mindfulness different from meditation?
Okay, so this is a question. I would say the answer is kind of yes and no, right?
Yeah.
When I mindfulness is probably the larger umbrella. Sorry, meditation is probably the larger umbrella, and mindfulness is a subset of it, right? So that is at a higher level. But then I'll kind of dive into the basics of what the difference is. Okay. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with meditation, right? It is a age-old, practice, been there for, a longer period, wherein mindfulness is very modern, right? I talked about being in the last 40, 50 years, right? And mindfulness is a scientifically proven, evidence-based, secular practice, right? So there is no religious things attached to mindfulness, right? As I said, you can practice mindfulness by sitting in a chair, or you can practice mindfulness by walking, by listening, by eating, right? So you could actually apply mindfulness in a day-to-day aspects of your life. It's all about being aware in the present moment. That is what mindfulness is all about, right? On meditation, on the other hand, is very focused, right? And sometimes it also involves certain posture, certain, asanas, or certain, reciting certain mantras or holding certain mudras. All of this could be part of meditation. I'm not saying it has to be, but then it could be, right? And that's what makes it, and it's a very structured way of doing it, right? You can't just meditate anywhere and anytime, right? If there are time and there's a place you can do it, but then mindfulness can be done anywhere, anytime, right? So that's probably the most subtle difference, I would say, between mindfulness and meditation, right? And in fact, we use meditation as a term inside mindfulness very loosely, right? But then, not to confuse anybody, there is a subtle difference between these two.
Certainly. So a follow-up question on this could be, can we use yoga and pranayama to achieve mindfulness?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the programs, it's called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program, right? It does talk about yoga practices within mindfulness as well, right? So today, in fact, I have done yoga myself personally, for several years. But then what I realized is, before practicing mindfulness, is we were just doing yoga, in terms of breathing, or doing whatever little bit of exercise, stretch we used to do as part of yoga. But I was never told by anybody to be in the present moment while doing yoga, right? So that's where we combine mindfulness, right, into yoga by being present, right? So what do we, for example, say, you're doing particular, asana, and you could feel the little stretch in that particular muscle or wherever that area is, right? So mindfulness teaches you to focus, right? What is the sensation am I experiencing in doing that particular asana, right? You're focused there instead of worrying about the pain and whatever you're going through or discomfort going through. Instead of just accepting what it is and being present in that moment is what people combine when they do yoga. So obviously the answer is yes, you can combine mindfulness into all these practices.
So true, Sarah. So true. The next question is that we are always living in a virtual world of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, etc. How much of these habits impact our mindfulness?
To some extent, yes, right. I wouldn't say we can't. Unfortunately, we have signed up to live in this world, right? There is no going back, right? Unless you can tell me that, hey, I'm going to give everything up and I'm going to Himalayas and I'm going to sit there, right? All of us cannot do it, right? So we all have commitment. So all I'm saying is, as long as you are using these aspects, right, to your social media or any other vehicle, right? Because we're all social animals, we are social creatures, we need that, the touch and feel and connection and warmth, right? So today in a modern world, this is how we stay connected with others. So obviously it is important, but then anything, we overdo is not going to help, right? So we were never designed to live in such a fast-paced modern world, right? And that is the whole point. We are all going through stress in our lives, right? So all of these technology is probably, while it is a boon on one side, obviously it is also a curse on the other side, right? So it's not helping us, right? So as long as you are managing that in a right way, as I said, limiting your media diet is very, very important, right? That's what I was I started off with that statement, right? So obviously it's not going to change. It is going to get worse. But as long as an individual you are able to tell yourself, right, I'm going to have a structured day, have a routine where I'm going to only check my Facebook or Twitter or any other LinkedIn for only this much time. I'm going to budget and then I'm going to do that, and it's absolutely fine, right? You can't like I posted a picture and every other minute, what is the update, what is the comment, how many likes? It's just going to ruin your day.
So true. So we believe that smartphones kind of stop us from being mindful.
Absolutely, they're a big distraction.
So taking up the next question, how to be stress-free if we have lots of work waiting for us in queue?
Sorry, so what is the question again?
How to be stress-free if we have lots of work waiting for us?
All right. So it's a trick question, I guess, right? So obviously, today, there are several studies which have been done in the workplace where more than 50% of people who said that they are going through some kind of stress in form of anxiety or depression, right? So obviously, these are all we're talking about workplace stress, right? So obviously it is getting harder and harder, right? And the numbers are actually growing as we speak, right? So it's all about, as I said, the expectation, the demand is also rising on one hand from an employer standpoint, right? And we are not able to deliver all of this in the right time, in the right quality. So obviously that is all causing stress for ourselves, right? So it's not an easy solution I have. It's just about planning your day, routine, following a routine, avoiding multitasking, incorporating mindfulness practices here and there in your day would obviously help to overcome some part of it, right? I'm not saying it's going to completely eliminate stress from your lives, right? Obviously stress is unavoidable, right? We only can learn to cope with it, right? And mindfulness is one way to cope with stress, right? So there are several other mechanisms to do it, right? In terms of maintaining a diet, doing proper exercise, getting a good night's sleep. All of these are very, very important to overcome stress, right? Again, the short answer is I don't have a magic wand or magic pill, but then it is all about, as an individual, how can you start planning your day, keeping a routine, and focusing what is important and not multitasking. All of that is going to obviously help.
Sure. So you say that not to multitask.
Absolutely, because in corporate world, that is exactly what we do. And that is actually, I said, there's a study which actually proves that people who multitask the productivity falls by 40%.
Okay. So taking up the next question is from Miss Ritu Rana. So she says that people are facing a lot of depression these days, either because of loneliness or maybe because they've lost some jobs. So do you have any advice for them so as to face these things?
Okay, so this is a challenge we are going through globally in terms of a lot of companies, and not, they don't have a choice either, right? So, they are letting go their employees because of, the economy is slowed down, and obviously there's no work, right? So which is very understandable at this point of time, right? And as I said, in fact, I've done sessions for several of my corporate clients in terms of how to deal with these kind of issue we are dealing with in terms of a lot of layoffs happening in corporate today, right? So we losing a job is actually a life changing event for a lot of us, right? So it's not so simple, right? It's almost, you go through a grieving process, right? It starts with denial, then anger, and then finally bargaining, and then you start accepting the fact that you don't have a job, right? So it's very similar to a grieving process when you lose a loved one, right? The same process what we go through when we lose a job. So it is absolutely normal for us to experience all of this, right? But then you can be better prepared on how do you deal with these things by knowing some of these things, right? So if you have a access to a psychologist through your company AP program, you should definitely reach out to them and understand how can you get through this grieving process, right? And some people take longer time to get through it, and some people get through it faster, right? So it's absolutely fine. And you should not be blaming yourself for any of these things, right? So that is what we do all the time, right? In fact, the when I talk about this, I get reminded about self-compassion, right? We are not compassionate to ourselves today, right? We treat ourselves worse than what we would treat our enemies, right? So don't blame yourself for whatever has happened, because it is nothing to do with you. It is to do with you, all COVID-19, the pandemic, the economy slowing down, right? So accept whatever it is, right? And I'm sure things are improving, things are going to get better, right? In fact, I always remember one of the biggest pandemic we experienced was probably a century back, right? It was called Spanish flu, right? Yeah. Almost 50 million people lost their lives, right? And that exactly happened like 1918 to 1920, right? And can you imagine, right? 100 years back, 50 million lives, right? Our population was very different then, right? And of course, it affected globally, right? Tough times have always defined us, right? After every storm there's a sunshine, after every winter there's spring, right? So human spirit is incredible. This is and human race is resilient, right? And that is one of the reasons why human beings are the most successful species on earth, right? So keep your positive outlook right there, and then I'm sure things will change, right? There is no reason for us to go into depression or feel lonely, right, because of this. And of course I understand what people experience, right? So that's very, very important, right? Whoever said loneliness, in fact loneliness is one of the biggest reason for depression, right? And especially among the elderly folks, right? So it's very important that we stay connected, right? While we are all today are maintaining physical distance, we all can emotionally stay connected with each other, right? Whether it's a family member or a colleague or a friend, whoever it is, right? So we need to do whatever we need to do in terms of reaching out to our friends and family members and staying on constant touch. All of that is very, very important.
Well, I hope that this answered Miss Ritu's question. So, taking up the next question from Miss Atitha Manjunath. During lockdown, when everybody's at home and there is a lot of noise in the house, how should I find some peaceful time?
One is, I would say, you can step out, go for a walk, or I'm sure within your house you could find, a corner where it's going to be much more peaceful, right? And those are the times where you probably want to do a quick mindfulness exercise, sit and then just practice those whatever from the TRANQUIL app, right? So that is one way of doing it. Or the other way to do is to indulge entire family into mindfulness, right? Hey, let's have a mindfulness moment here, right? Let's bring everybody together. All of you can sit on the dining table, right? Play one of the mindfulness track from TRANQUIL app and just practice, right? So So maybe that is another aspect of it, right? And I'm sure, there are times, where you will get those me time, right? Whether it is early in the morning or late in the night, right? You could use that time for yourself to, reflect on some of the aspects of what went through the day, right? In fact, one of the things I generally talk about, which I personally practice, is writing a gratitude journal, right? One of the most powerful practices, I would say, what I have discovered personally, right? I don't know how many of you are familiar with, right? Or you could be wondering, what is about gratitude, right? So gratitude, is about focusing on our blessings. Life becomes more happier, healthier, and we start experiencing a deeper sense of fulfillment. In fact, there are several studies have proved that people who practice gratitude are happier and healthier. And I've said to several of my clients that, this is a great time for us to start a practice like this. We are at home, involve your kids, you involve your family members, right? And ask all of them to, talk about what are they grateful for, right? It takes just 2 minutes of your time every day, right? So all you need to do is maybe book a old diary or a book from your house, and then start reflecting on your day and just write 3 things you're grateful for, right? And the things you could say could be relatively small in importance or large, or relatively large. But all you need to do is, look at what are the things you could be grateful for, and actually start writing it down, right? And I recommend people to write it down, right? And the goal of the exercise is to remember a good event, experience, person, or a thing in life, right? So and just enjoy the emotions which come with it when you start writing it down. And why is it so important to write it down, right? All the research around gratitude have suggested that when we translate the thoughts into concrete language, it makes us more aware of them, and also deepens the emotional impact on us, right? And finally, over a period of time, right, feeling productive or feeling appreciative, and looking for the good just becomes your second nature, right? So this, again, I know I'm digressing from the question what the person asked, but then I just want to make sure, maybe I just realized for that particular question, this answer is also something people could get, where that gives them a 2 minutes of a calm time where they are thinking about, reflecting on the day, and basically trying to be, what is the best thing happened today? What is that I can be grateful for, right? All of that is actually, and again, it's all a subset of mindfulness practice, I would say. The practice of gratitude is very powerful.
Sure, Sarah. And while you were answering this question, so I was reminded of a quote that happiness can be found even in the darkest times, if only one remembers to turn on the light.
Absolutely.
So, beautifully answered, Sarah. So moving on to the next question, that once again we have Ritu with us, and she's saying that there are people who are at their lowest point of soul energy or emotional turmoil nowadays, and it's hard for them to sit even for a minute and be able to practice mindfulness. How is the way to go forward with that?
Yeah, initially it is going to be hard, and especially, as I said, given where you are, right, in your life, sometime, if you're going through a lot of uncertainty and anxiety, and you just lost your job, all of that is going to make it harder. But that is the the time when we should be actually focusing on being in the present moment. So one of the exercise I generally talk about is, it's called grounding exercise, right? So we talked about our 5 senses, right? The ability to hear and see and smell and taste and touch, right? So one of the simple exercise we recommend is, when you're going through this kind of difficult emotions, right, use this grounding exercise. So basically, what are the 5 things can you see, right? What are the 4 things you can hear? What are the 3 things you can smell? What are the 2 things you can touch, right? So when you start looking at this, immediately you come to the present moment, right? It gives you a break from being either in the future or in the past, right? That's what this particular exercise will do, right? So the moment you start looking at, what are the 5 things I can see, you're in the present moment. Okay, I can see wherever I'm sitting, I can see a curtain, I can see a light, I can see a fan, right? So the moment I start seeing and start telling myself, I'm in the present moment, right? So these are some simple exercises I would recommend. You do it during the day, different times, which will bring you, it will break you, from wherever you are in the past or in the future and bring you to the present moment, right? And slowly, as I said, you can do that stop exercise, which is also available inside the TRANQUIL app. It's a 2-minute exercise, right? So all these short exercises is something you may want to start with, and then slowly maybe build the practice of actually practicing mindfulness for a longer period, maybe 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, right? So as I said, it is initially hard because we have never used to this point of being quiet and doing nothing, right? And I'll ask you this question: when was the last time you did nothing? You're always doing something, right? The moment I get 30 seconds, I'm on the phone, WhatsApping or looking at Facebook, right? So mindfulness as a practice will give you the time where you are able to reflect, be in the present moment. So there are several advantages when you start practicing. And trust me, initially it is very hard, right? You have a lot of things going on in your head, right? That the voice inside your head is saying, what are you doing? And your mind is wandering, right? What we call refer as monkey mind, from thought to thought to thought to different thoughts, right? So that's the reason we suggest using this app, so that you are able to be more focused. So you have a guide, you have a coach who is going to be in this journey with you to walk you through this process, right? So that is the whole idea of developing this app and giving it to people to start practicing it. And I said it's not easy, but it's not very difficult either. It just needs practice, like anything else.
Sure, Sarah. And I'm sure that the answers which you are giving today are spreading smiles across many of people's faces, because they are surely spreading a smile on my faces. So the next question is from Gadepalli Bharani. So she asks, till now, professionals did work from home, and now we are back to work again, sitting at home for these many days, and people had become used to this routine. So how should we prepare to go to the offices and pay full attention for work amidst the crisis that is going on with COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, so if you rewind 90 days back, when we started working from home, there was a high level of uncertainty and anxiety for all of us in settling down to the new normal of working from home, right? So in the past, we all used to love working from home, right? For whatever reason, I can wear my shorts, I don't have to shower, or maybe whatever, several reasons, right? And I don't have to drive, traffic, and I'm sure, if you live in Bangalore, I'm sure you know what the traffic looks like here, right?
I've been to that. Yeah.
Right. So all of that was something, we really enjoyed it, right? And then sooner we realized, oh my God, I'm missing the whole collaboration. I'm missing the whole, the sense of, collaborating with my colleagues, reaching out to them whenever I need. Now I'm by myself, right? So we started facing a lot of challenges, and then we started adjusting to that, and then we are at a point where we are comfortable working from home, right? So suddenly now in the last few weeks, a lot of lockdown has been lifted. We are going through unlock 1.0, and then a lot of companies have started bringing people into the office. So now there's a different level of anxiety in terms of, oh my God, I have to be in the office now. I don't know who is going carrying the virus. What if I get the virus by going to the office, right? So it's a different level of anxiety. So my response is, if you recall how you went through that, the initial period, the first few weeks in March, right, when we are getting used to all of that, and then we quietly settle down, right, and you're going to go through the same cycle again, right? And this is what happens in our lives, right? You just have to remember that it's always, appears to be very difficult to begin with, but then as you go through the motion, you will settle down and you'll start realizing that this will also pass, right? So that's exactly what your experience is. So in fact, we are doing sessions with a lot of our corporates in terms of, how do you overcome this anxiety about getting back to work, right? From 3 months back, we were doing a different session, and now we are doing, different sessions, right? So it's about the same experience you're going to go through. It's just about, follow those precautions. Whatever, when we started this 3 months, 90 days back, we started talking about a lot of precautions, right? In terms of washing your hands, maintaining social distancing, wearing a mask, all of that, right? Similarly, now we're going to do the same thing, right? I mean, of course, most of the workplace are preparing well for this COVID-19 in terms of, temperature check to, giving, people to clean their hands and all of that, right? So of course, they're also maintaining social distancing within office space as well, right? So they are doing whatever they could, right? Following the best practices. It's just that you have to adhere to the best practices, what you should be doing in terms of, maintaining those social distance and wearing those masks when you're in the office, all of that. So again, as I said, this is something we will get used to it, right? This could become the new norm as well. right? We don't know. We will find out in the next coming months. But it's just that we have to go with the flow and accept it the way it is, right? So the more you push, the more harder it's going to become, right? So accept it and just go with the flow, and I'm sure all of that will work out.
Thank you, Sarah, for that answer. So we have a comment from Mr. Mahesh Kumar. He says that the session was an eye opener for him to stop multitasking because he thought that it was a great skill till now. So so that was a feedback from one of our viewers. And personally, I have a question for you, Sarah. So I've seen a lot of people being, tongue-tied while speaking on a public platform because they might have suffered from an attack, anxiety attack to be more precise. So how can one recover or fight that thing, that anxiety attack?
Okay, so are you referring to a stage fear kind of a reference here, or is it something different?
I don't know as of now, Sarah, because you are the one who is an expert on this. So
right, no. I'm asking the question in terms of the example you gave. So is it to do with a certain aspect of people stammer sometimes, which is part of their personality, or for example more than 75 to 80% of people in leadership roles today are very uncomfortable when they have to go on a stage and speak because obviously it puts them in a different perspective. So are you referring to the later?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is a very common experience we all go through, right? Especially when you are in front of an audience, right? 100 people, 200 people. It could be known or unknown people. Even if you are an expert in a certain topic and subject, it becomes very hard, right? Suddenly you forget what you're supposed to say, right? So what happens is there is a biological aspect to this. There is a fight or flight which kicks in, right? And that's when our mouth goes dry, our hands become sweaty, right? We start trembling and we start forgetting. So this is a very common response to stress for all of us, right? So what happens is, the moment we are in front of a large crowd on a stage, our stress kicks in, right? We become very stressful, right? So in fact, I have gone through personally, and I've overcome this long time ago, but then I know exactly what happens and why this happens, right? So one is understanding that, right, in terms of what your fight or flight mechanism which kicks in your body. That is one, right? And two is, of course, practice, right? Everything, as I said, whatever we do today requires constant practice, right? So public speaking is an art, right? You have to practice, you have to practice and practice and practice. And then, when you go on the stage, right, you start making eye contact, right? The more and more you avoid eye contact, it's going to get harder for you, right? So these are some of the aspects I personally follow, right? And do some deep breathing before you go there. All of this is something, I've seen it actually work for, me personally. So I'm sure, there are several other techniques you can use depending on whatever is convenient to you, right? And probably that is a way to get out there and face it, right? You have to face your fears, right? And that is how you will overcome your fears. If you think that I can't do this, you will never do this.
So it's like practice and practice and practice.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have another question, which would be the last question of the session. So engaging kids and family members into some creative activities like cooking or anything, which is thought stimulating. So could this be helpful in achieving, mindfulness?
Absolutely. As I said, mindfulness can be practiced throughout your day, right? So I could be cooking and I can be mindful. I'm being present, right? Instead of, whatever I'm cooking, if I'm thinking about my next meeting or, tomorrow I need to go shop this, obviously I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing at the present moment, right? So and cooking is an activity where it's actually very easy to focus because you're seeing something live in front of you. You can smell, right? You can feel it, right? So it's a lot more easier to be in the present moment while cooking than being lost, right? So obviously any other activity for that matter, right? Maybe, in fact, mindfulness coloring is one of the most popular activity we do in corporates. In fact, the mandala coloring is very, very popular. Today, there are adult coloring books available, right, in Amazon or Flipkart. You can buy them and people practice it, right? Because it brings them to the present moment. It improves their focus and concentration, creativity. It reduces stress, right? So all of these activities, whatever you do, right? The idea is to be in the present moment and be aware of what is unfolding, right? So same thing applies, whether you're cooking, you're washing your dishes, or anything else, right? You can be in the present moment.
So true. So having no further questions, so that was it from our end. We thank you, Sarah, for having delivered this wonderful session. I'm completely certain that the audience would have taken back a lot of learnings because a lot of seed of wisdoms have been distributed today by you. Thank you so much, Sarah, for having joined our cause. So that was it from our end, guys. Hope you enjoyed the session and thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Good night.